Okay, welcome. Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life. So glad to have you all here tonight. My name is Neil Vandery. I'm the officiator here at the church, and we are a transhumanist church. We're a church where people come when they want to live a long time. Super longevity is our goal. You know, it's our common desire. We're people from many different walks in life, but what unites us is the desire to live in our best unlimited lifespan, and we're succeeding at that. We're going to do that. Here we celebrate all of the holidays. We like to celebrate all of the holidays from all of the various thoughts and ideas, and I want to wish all of you who celebrate Easter to have a very happy Easter this weekend. And there's a special meeting coming up. Eric, where are you? Eric, if you'll stand for a moment. Eric is in charge of this, and this is in Miami on July 20th and 21st. You can attend the first ever Global Cryonics Summit. Eric is going to be here tonight, and if you want to talk with him about that, he'll tell you more. It's organized by our friends from the cryosphere, and when you attend, be prepared to participate in action-oriented presentations, discussions, and workshops and debates while directly connecting with peers and industry veterans in person. This is the Global Cryonics Summit. Some of the highlighted speakers will include Bill Faloon, Robin Hansen, Ashwin DeWolf, and Kai Micah Mills. You'll hear from the leaders of all of the major cryonics organizations alongside researchers, scientists, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from across the industry and all over the globe. You can get your tickets now, and you can use this QR code. When you do so, you'll find this also in the live stream that we're having, of course. So be sure to you can also go to the website that they have there. So be sure to take advantage of that. That's something you want to definitely see. If you have any questions about cryonic suspension, be sure to see me or Eric. Talk to us. We'll be happy to talk with you about the concept of cryonic suspension. Our services here at Perpetual Life are once a month. Our services next month will be in Zoom only. That's going to be April 25th in Zoom only, when we have an osteohealth presentation by Kyle Zagrodsky. Also, there is a People Unlimited Super Longevity event this weekend. And if you'd like to attend, you can do that. You can attend in Zoom, and if you're in the Scottsdale area, talking to those people who are there, you can go there in person. Here's information about the Super Longevity event that People Unlimited is putting on. You'll find details in our newsletters or go to the People Unlimited website. I'd like to welcome new friends, all of our new friends. If you're here for the very first time, please put your hand in the air. We welcome you. I'm glad you're here. And we have a special gift. If you'll, Shri and our helper Jamie, come on forward. We're going to give you a little necklace. And after our service tonight, you're invited to join our delicious 5-star buffet. And this necklace gives you permission to go to the front of the line, skip the line, go to the front of the line for our delicious 5-star buffet. Perpetual Life Creed. We believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our prophets, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, through our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so, we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. I'd like to thank you also for your donations that you give. We appreciate those donations, both online and here in person. You can make a donation in person at the boxes at the registration table or the buffet table, and your donations help us to improve our future events. Tonight we have 3 great speakers. And we will have a question and answer session after each speaker, so please make note of your questions so that we can address them after they're done speaking. Tonight we will start with Ben Azadi. Ben is a functional health practitioner with over 16 years of experience, and he's the author of 4 best-selling books. Ben has already signed the books that we have tonight, and he'll possibly be with us for a short time after the talks tonight, but he has brought to give you books tonight, and they're at the table there, and they're a gift from Ben to you tonight. We thank you for that, Ben. He is an award-winning podcast host of the Metabolic Freedom Podcast and the founder of Keto Kamp. His presentation is on health and intermittent fasting. Let's welcome Ben Azadi to the podium. Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much. You all hear me good? Awesome. So excited to be here with you all today. It's a drive up from Miami and not too far away. I'm going to be teaching today about 5 main causes of metabolic disease. Metabolism. We've all heard of the word metabolism. The Greeks call metabolism transform. So we take food, oxygen, light, and our metabolism transforms that into energy. So we produce energy, we burn fat, we feel good, and we live a long, healthy life. How many of you would like to live a long, healthy life and burn some fat at the same time? So I'm going to be outlining the 5 main causes, but more importantly, not just the causes, the solutions. How do we overcome this? So let's get into it, because I have a lot of slides. Here are the stats according to the CDC and cancer.org. 1 in 3 women are diagnosed with cancer within their lifetime. For men, 1 in 2. 60% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. They're predicting by the year 2032, 1 in 2 children will be born on the autism spectrum. Heart disease is the #1 killer here in the United States and pretty much worldwide. 600,000 plus people die from heart disease every single year. 1 person every 33 seconds dies from a cardiovascular event. And that's because of this word right here, something called lipophobia. Lipophobia is fear of dietary fat based off of 50 plus years of propaganda and misinformation. It started with this guy. How many of you know this guy? Ancel Keys, familiar with him? Yeah. So Ancel Keys was a very persuasive gentleman, a scientist that worked with the US government in the 1950s. And he hypothesized that the reason why people have a heart attack, stroke, is because they're eating cholesterol and saturated fat. So he did this 22-country study where he wanted to take his hypothesis and verify it with a study, show it to the US government so we could create these US guidelines. And here's what he did. He surveyed 22 countries on the top left there. However, most of the countries did not fit his hypothesis, but 7 did. So he only chose to share the 7 countries, cherry-picked the data, showed that data to the government. These countries, these 7 countries, they consume the most saturated fat, the most cholesterol, and they have the highest amount of heart disease. So the government took that and ran with it. But here's what he didn't share as well. Those 7 countries were not even consuming a lot of saturated fat and cholesterol. They were consuming fake fats, margarine. So when he gave that information to the government ran with it, and there began the low-fat craze. There began the lipophobia. Fat is bad for you. Fat's going to make your heart explode. And a lie told often enough becomes the truth. And the reason why a lot of people believe that heart attacks are caused by a buildup of cholesterol is because when they do autopsies on heart attack victims, what do they see? A lot of cholesterol built up in the arteries. Therefore, it's the cholesterol that caused the damage, that killed the person. That's like saying, every time I show up to a fire in my neighborhood, I noticed there are firefighters at the scene of the crime. Therefore, the firefighters caused the fire. They're always there. Well, the firefighters are there, obviously, to put out the fire. The cholesterol is there to put out the fire, the inflammation. Cholesterol is one of the most important fats that we can consume, one of the most important fats that are building our cells and our membranes and our brains. It allows our body to function and to thrive. And I interviewed, this is a good friend of mine, his name is Dr. Philip Ovadia. He's a world-renowned heart surgeon. He has a book called Stay Off My Operating Table. Pretty clever, right? And I'm going to share this clip with you. It's about a minute or so. And he's going to share how the only cause of heart disease, there's only one cause. Endothelial dysfunction caused by damage to the blood vessels, correct? And he's going to share what causes that. It's multifactorial to what damaged the blood vessels. So watch this short video.
Forms of heart disease. But the most common form is what we call atherosclerotic heart disease, the buildup of plaque within the arteries of the heart that can ultimately lead to things like heart attacks. And when you look at atherosclerotic heart disease, it really comes down to one major factor, and that is damage to the blood vessel wall. That is the inciting event that has to happen for these plaques to start to build up. Now, what causes that damage? That's where we get into some different factors.
That's the
big
question.
ones.
Yeah.
Yep. The big ones are going to be insulin resistance, first, and foremost, probably the most common problem today. Smoking is another big one. Now, we've done a pretty good job at cutting down on the smoking rates. And, that ultimately is what led to some of the improvements we saw around heart disease, throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and, up until about 2000, when that downward trend that we were seeing started to go back up again. Probably high blood pressure is the other most common one we see. But again, high blood pressure acts via insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to insulin resistance and then other toxins that damage the blood vessels, smoking being the most common, but there are other things like heavy metals, air pollution, things like that can cause that as well. But ultimately, we have to come back to damage to the blood vessel wall, to the lining of the blood vessel, as the root cause of heart disease.
Insulin. You mentioned that a few times. How many of you have tested your fasting insulin in the last few years or so? Yeah, that's a very important marker to get done. It's very cheap if your insurance doesn't cover it. It's like $30. It's a fasting insulin, meaning you're 10 or 12 hours fasted, and it'll tell you if you have insulin resistance or not. And I'm going to show you why that's important when I get into the blood sugar issue later. Here's the reason why they don't want us to know the truth. The statin industry made $15.4 billion last year. A lot of money to be made by statins, although statins are not preventing these deaths, by the way. There's a lot of issues with statins. So the truth is that cholesterol is not the boogeyman that we have been led to believe. Cholesterol is vital for you to feel good and to thrive. And most people actually die from a heart attack with normal to low cholesterol and high cholesterol. This is 2009 here, University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. We've known this for quite some time. And I also interviewed a gentleman named Dr. Nathan Bryan on my podcast. He is a world-renowned nitric oxide researcher, and he is going to make the case here that if you have a total cholesterol under 200, that is a problem. Check this out.
More concerned if somebody has a total cholesterol of less than 200 versus somebody who has a higher cholesterol. Explain that and what it does to block nitric oxide.
Our body makes cholesterol, and so our body doesn't make mistakes. If our body needs cholesterol, our body's going to make it upon demand. So we get cholesterol from the diet. We also get it through endogenous production. Cholesterol is also the backbone for things like testosterone, estrogen, vitamin D. So if our cholesterol gets too low, we can't make hormones for vitamin D. We have a global epidemic of testosterone deficiency in men and hormone imbalances in women and vitamin D deficiency. Our body heals itself, right? Our body senses what's going on, then self-corrects. But if we have a drug that inhibits endogenous cholesterol production, which is what a statin does, then our body can't respond. So if it senses that we're not getting enough cholesterol or that we need to make it, then the body can't. The consequences of that are obviously obvious now.
So 200 or more we wanted at. Whenever I, on my social media channels, I talk a lot about keto and a carnivore diet and eating all these healthy fats. And I get a lot of comments from people saying, Ben, I started following your recommendations and my cholesterol shot up. My doctor is concerned. He wants to prescribe a statin. What should I do? You know what I say? I don't make that decision for them, but I say, good job. You probably feel a lot better with your cholesterol elevated. And they're like, yeah, I lost 30 pounds. My inflammation is down. All these benefits come. There's an agenda behind prescribing a lot of statins, and there's another risk out there. This might be surprising for a lot of you, but antiseptic mouthwash can be problematic, and Dr. Nathan Bryan's going to show you exactly what happens when you consume antiseptic mouthwash.
So when you disrupt the oral microbiome, it shuts down nitric oxide production. We published, I believe it was in 2012, that if you use mouthwash, your blood pressure goes up. I was on the doctor's show several years ago revealing that if you use mouthwash, you lose the cardioprotective benefits of exercise. So think about this. You try to do all the right things. You try to eat a good diet. You try to get moderate physical exercise. But if you use in mouthwash, you eliminate the entire cardioprotective benefits of everything you're doing. So, there's a reason we don't take an antibiotic every day for the rest of our lives, because the disruption in the gut microbiome.
It's like dropping a nuke. It'll take care of the bad guys that we want to get to, but also the civilians that...
Yeah, it's collateral damage that causes systemic... It wreaks havoc on the body. The microbiome, the bacteria that live in and on our body, outnumber on cells 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we eradicate those to our own demise. So we have to maintain a healthy microbiome.
Mouthwash, antiseptic mouthwash, fluoride toothpaste does something similar, and PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, antacids, when you take that long term. 2015 study showed those who took PPIs for 3 to 5 years without taking a break had a 45% increase in cardiovascular death. And what? And colon cancer. Yeah, a lot of problems occur there. I like keto, so I'm going to share this quick study with you. Ketones are, and I'm going to share a little bit more about keto later, but ketones are actually really protective for the heart. I saw there were some slides. The next speaker's going to talk about mitochondria, and I'm sure Bill's going to reference it. There's a lot that health experts don't agree on, like vegan, caloric restriction, no carnivore, a lot of disagreement. One thing I think we all agree on is the mitochondria are very, very important, and creating healthy mitochondria is very crucial for longevity and fat loss. Well, ketones are signaling molecules, and keto is not a diet, by the way. It's a metabolic process. There's nothing new about keto, just nuance, but keto has been around for as long as humans have existed. When you're in ketosis, those ketones communicate with your mitochondria, and it signals to them, create more mitochondria. The mitochondria duplicate and duplicate and duplicate and creates mitochondrial biogenesis. So when you're in a state of ketosis, you're creating 400% more energy from your mitochondria, ATP molecules, than when you're stuck burning sugar. And the protective effect with the heart is really profound because the heart is loaded with mitochondria. The cells that are most metabolically active, the brain, the eyes, the heart, the ovaries, the testicles, these are the organs and cells that are loaded with mitochondria, and keto helps those organs the most, including the heart. And this study shows how protective ketones are for preventing cardiovascular disease. Let me ask you this question, and it's not all bad news, I promise. I have some solutions here, but let me ask you this question. What percentage of Americans are metabolically healthy, metabolically flexible? What do you think that percentage is? Somebody says 27%, 25%. So I'm going to get to the study, but here's where the trends are showing. This is going to show you obesity rates from the 1985 till today. So check this out here. Some states are at 14%. Then in the early 1990s, some states entered 15 to 19% of those states have obesity. Now we have 20% in the late 90s, 25%. 2005, you can see how it goes and goes and goes. So this study showed only 12% of American adults are metabolically healthy. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, 10-year study, 8,000 people. I would rewrite this and say 88% of American adults are in a keto deficiency. They could really use keto to change their metabolism. But you said 7%, right? That's actually another study showed that's actually closer to 7% are healthy, meaning 93%. The study is showing 93% of American adults have healthy cardiometabolic markers. So I rewrite it and say 93% of them are in keto deficiency. They could really use keto. Harvard says by 2030, not too far from right now, 50% of the United States population will be classified as obese. Not just overweight, but actually obese. And it was very uncommon in the 1970s, obesity was. What happened? What went wrong? That's what we're going to get to right now. That's part of it, yes. First of all, we got to understand that nobody has a weight problem. It is a weight symptom. So when you hear somebody talk about, oh, you're overweight, just eat less and move more. Cut your calories, move your body. That's looking at the symptom. Nobody has a weight problem. Nobody loses weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. So first of all, focusing on your weight, extra weight as the problem is the wrong way to go about it, because the body does not lose weight to get healthy. It gets healthy to lose weight. So this is me. I weighed 250 pounds there. This is 2008 on the left there. And I was actually obese there, although I carried it well because I'm 6'2", but I was 34% body fat. Physically obese, mentally obese. I was depressed and suicidal. I was ready to give up on life. I was addicted to video games and sugar and food. And I took ownership, and I started to eat healthier and think better thoughts. And I'm going to share some of the tips with you today. But I never had a weight problem. I had a weight symptom. I got healthy, and the weight came off as a side effect. Weight loss is a side effect of good metabolic health. So what I'm going to teach you today is 5 main things to restore metabolic health. And I wrote this book, as Neil mentioned, and thank you, Neil, for having me today, by the way. It's an honor. I wrote this book called Keto Flex. It's my latest book, which is 212 pages or so of how to do keto, how to do it for men versus women, menstruating women versus postmenopausal women, and how to go in and out. Because one of the things that separates me from most of my keto colleagues is that I don't believe in long-term continuous ketosis. I believe in metabolic flexibility, which is burning fat and burning sugar, burning fat and burning sugar. Now, most people are burning sugar. We got to teach them to burn fat. So I brought 20 copies. I signed them all. My gift to you. He'll announce how to get that later, but I brought that for you, and it's been endorsed by some of the greatest thought leaders in the space here. And I get to share the stages with them. I'm actually writing a new book with Hay House that's coming out next year called Metabolic Freedom. And this presentation is actually part of what that book's going to be about. So you guys are kind of getting a sneak peek there. I love this quote from Einstein. He said, "Intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them." I mean, how much better is it to be proactive than reactive? I want to empower all of you to be geniuses, and I believe you are, because you're here learning about health and longevity on a Thursday night where you could be somewhere else. So you all, I want to applaud you. You all are geniuses because you're becoming proactive here. Yeah, amen. All right, the 5 root causes with the solutions. Let's start with number 1, toxins. Dr. Philip Avadia, the gentleman, the heart surgeon, mentioned heavy metals. That's part of my story. I had heavy metal toxicity from my silver amalgam fillings. Toxins are a big issue. The Environmental Working Group examined the cord blood of newborns, and they found babies begin life exposed to as many as 287 of the 413 toxic chemicals they studied. 180 of them were known to cause cancer. Cancer rates in children have risen 67.1% since 1950, according to the Columbia University School of Public Health. 95% of cancer is caused by diet and environment. This is some downstream toxicity stuff I'm going to share with you here. This study showed the average person eats a credit card's worth of plastic every week. 5 grams worth of plastic every week, which equates to a credit card. So the tip there is drink out of glass bottles as much as possible. Don't heat up plastic Tupperware in a microwave. Use glass as much as possible to avoid getting the 5 grams of plastic, the credit card. The next tip is with cash register receipts. Cash register receipts actually contain a high amount of BPA. And this study showed that individual thermal receipts actually contain 250 to 1,000 times more BPA than what we're concerned about from food. So whenever I go to the supermarket, Publix, Whole Foods, whatever it is, and they say, "Here's your receipt," I say, "No, thank you." Throw it in the trash. So, because what happens is if you do take it, whatever goes under skin goes into the bloodstream, but you put it in your pocket. Now the pocket is contaminated with BPA. Maybe you throw the receipt out later, then your pocket has it until you wash the pans. So say no to the cash register receipts. And it's not about calories. I'm tired of the fitness people out there saying that people are overweight and obese because they're just not exercising enough. They have to be in a calorie deficit. It has nothing to do with that. Calories matter, but they're not what's important. This study from the Journal of Diabetes Investigation shows that there's new risk factors for obesity and diabetes. This is 2015, by the way. They're called environmental chemicals. And this is how it works. These chemicals are called obesogens. And when the body is in contact with these toxins, the number one priority for the innate intelligence in the immune system is survival. So it activates this pathway you see behind me called PPAR gamma, which tells the innate intelligence, the metabolism, take those toxins out of the bloodstream, away from vital organs, and put it into your fat cells. Because there's room there. And if there's not room, it creates larger fat cells. And if you run out of room there, what does it do? It creates new fat cells. That's how toxins make us fat. They're called lipophilic because they're fat-loving chemicals. And it does this as a survival mechanism, and this study is showing that. And there's a new classification of chemicals called diabetogens. So you can see right there in the bottom, below obesogens, diabetogens. These are chemicals that interfere with the beta cells. They kill the beta cells in your pancreas, which produces insulin. We want to be really aware of these environmental toxins. So here's a list of them. There's a lot. Here's just a basic list for you that I wanted to put in an image here. I would say the biggest ones out there are heavy metals from silver amalgam fillings. So if you have silver amalgam fillings, seek out a holistic dentist, a biological dentist, get them removed safely. Lead from paint houses built before 1978. And of course, the household chemicals, our detergents and cleaning supplies. So just do your best to kind of chip away at these things. And as you do, the body is incredible. It starts to adapt and get healthier and healthier. And then the weight comes off and the inflammation drops. And you see these inflammatory markers improve as well. So just be aware of that. Second one are adulterated seed oils. How many of you have heard of the dangers of seed oils and vegetable oils? I'm just curious. So about half of you have. I'm going to give you a whole list in a second, and I have a gift for you right here, in addition to the books. But in 1939, there wasn't really a lot of global production of vegetable oils, seed oils. Until 1949, it started to ramp up, first with cottonseed oil. And you can see now, 2019, it's even higher now. There are a lot of seed oils, vegetable oils, being pumped around the world. I interviewed Dr. Kate Shanahan, and I got to meet her at a conference that we spoke at, Keto Orlando Summit, a couple years ago. She is a medical doctor. She wrote a fantastic book called Deep Nutrition. Highly recommend it. It's one of those classic health books out there, Deep Nutrition. She was the nutritionist for the Los Angeles Lakers when Kobe Bryant used to play. She was Kobe's nutritionist. Very smart. And I asked her the question. I said, Dr. Kate, I'm going to give you three scenarios. Out of these three scenarios, which one will cause disease faster? The first scenario, smoking cigarettes every day. The second one, eating processed sugar every day. And the third one, eating vegetable oils every day. What do you think she said? Y'all are smart, geniuses, like I said. She actually laughed and she said, that's easy, Ben. It's hands down the vegetable oils. She said, look, smoking is not good for you, obviously, but once you finish the last puff, most of the damage has been done. Eating processed sugar, obviously not good for you, but what happens? You get a glucose spike and then it goes back to where it was a couple hours later. You could exercise, you could burn it off. These vegetable oils, called linoleic acid, let me ask you, the half-life, meaning if you stopped eating them today, how many days later will they remain, half of it remain in your body fat, creating inflammation? What do you think it is? The half-life. Half of them are still in your body, around your cell membranes, your mitochondrial membranes, gunking up your cells, for lack of a better word, creating inflammation. Here's why. They're unstable. And it's not that all seed oils are bad for you, by the way. They're not. Not all omega-6 fats are bad for you. It's the ones that are highly processed, which is most of them. They use high heat temperatures for these oils. And these oils are called polyunsaturated fats. They contain a lot of these double bonds, and it makes them really unstable. And when they are introduced to high heat, they turn rancid. They turn into an inflammatory fat. And it smells rancid. So what do these companies do? They add detergents to it to mask the smell. And they add more detergents to make it look clear. Then they put it into a bottle, and then the American Heart Association puts their stamp of approval on it, and they sell it at Publix. Here's a list of them. You might want to write this down. You might want to take a photo of them. but this is the 9 bad fats here. Canola, which is called rapeseed oil in the UK. Corn, soybean, cottonseed, safflower, peanut, sunflower, grapeseed, rice bran, and fish oil. I'm putting fish oil in there, and we could talk about that there in the Q&A. Now, these are polyunsaturated fats. What we want to do, simple swaps, swap them for saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. These are much stable. Saturated fats have none of those double bonds I spoke about, and monounsaturated fats have 1, so they're more stable. So here's the list here. Replace them with olive oil, avocado oil, butter, ghee, duck fat, lard, coconut oil, and beef tallow. And even better, a rule of thumb that I teach my students is when you're cooking with food, use animal fats like butter, ghee, duck fat, lard, and beef tallow. When you're using salad dressings and dips or low heat, use the fruit-based oils, olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. But the challenge is this, and this is going to lead to my gift for you all. I think I have enough for all of you. Should. When I go to restaurants, and when you go to a restaurant, what are they going to use? They're going to use these. Yeah, even your 5-star, Michelin star restaurant. What I've been doing for years is I tell the server, I'm allergic to these vegetable oils. And in order for me to avoid an allergic reaction in your restaurant, I need to use these healthier oils. Do you have butter? Do you have olive oil? And it works like a charm. And I've been telling my students to do this for years, but they feel uncomfortable. So the gift is something that I developed for you called a seed oil allergy card. And yeah, you're going to really clap now because you don't even have to download it. I actually brought the printed out card for you to use. So now you can clap, and this is for you here. So I'm going to hand this out in a second, but what it says, you see it up there. Dear chef, I'm allergic to the vegetable oils you see below. I must avoid the ones marked with the red X. Below are safer options. Thanks for keeping these safe. So all you need to do is show this to the server. They'll probably bring it to the chef, and you don't take the hit. Remember, it's 2 years, which is 680 days that stays in your body. So Neil, you could take one and then just pass it out. We should have enough for everybody.
Actually, I'll put them by the book table.
Perfect. There you go. He'll give it to you with the books. So that'll help a lot. If you want to use that, it's for you. And then I have this as a meet and greet, but ignore the top text. But we do have 20 books that's signed for you, and Neil will give that to you. We'll talk about that later. All right, the third one is glyphosate. Yeah, boo to glyphosate. How many of you have been to Europe, Italy before? What do you notice over there versus over here in terms of people? What's the biggest? Less obesity. That's it. Less obesity over there. Is it because they have more gyms there? They don't have any gyms. Yeah, that's true. They enjoy their community, which is what you guys are doing here, which is very important for longevity. But here's the commonality there. They've banned glyphosate many years ago and other inflammatory ingredients like red dye 40 and different red dyes. Stephanie Seneff from MIT and her colleagues Nancy Swanson make strong correlations between the applications of glyphosate and the rise in disease as they track closely together. So this is glyphosate and dementia. You see it tracking closely together. Glyphosate and diabetes, tracking closely together. Autism, tracking closely together. Alzheimer's, tracking closely together. And then we have Parkinson's. What glyphosate does, it is a chelator, meaning it pulls minerals out of your body. And the mitochondria use 2 primary sources for energy. Amino acids, which we can get from food, but the body makes it as well, and minerals. We cannot make minerals. We get them from our nutrition. So glyphosate is mitochondrial poison. It starves the mitochondria, strips minerals out of the body, and that's not even the biggest problem. Those heavy metals I spoke about, Stephanie Seneff has proven it drives these metals deeper into your tissues and your brain, harder to get to. Aluminum, mercury, lead in the bones. We can't get away from glyphosate. That's the bad news. Even organic crops have off spray. It's estimated that 60% of rainfall contains glyphosate. But I will tell you this, the most sprayed crops in the world with glyphosate are corn, soy, wheat. Don't shoot me here, but coffee. And coffee is a great health tool. Just make sure it's organic. Problem solved. Make sure it's organic. I drink coffee all the time. Just make sure it's organic. And then make sure you are organic, non-GMO as much as possible. All right, I got to move on here. Glucose spikes and insulin spikes is the fourth reason. If you want to age fast, raise glucose and insulin. You'll age faster than anybody you know. It's the first domino to fall. Insulin resistance is the first domino to fall that leads to diabetes, that leads to heart disease, that leads to amputations, that leads to kidney failures. I lost my dad in 2014 to the complications of diabetes. I saw it firsthand. And here's the untold truth about diabetes. Most people don't understand that just because they're taking medication doesn't mean you're exempt from the set of statistics that come with diabetes. Diabetes medication might show the blood sugars, which are the symptom, getting better, but the diabetes is getting worse. Conventional medicine treats the symptom, the glucose, but the root cause is high insulin and cell membrane inflammation. By taking insulin, I'm not saying to get off your insulin meds. Don't take it that way. But what I'm saying is when you're just focused on the meds, the root cause gets worse. And this study showed the A1C, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugars. I think a lot of you get that in your annual reports, but it's showing you how high and frequently are you spiking the glucose. It's called the A1C. If you're at 5.7, you're considered pre-diabetic. Once you hit 6.5%, you're considered diabetic. This study showed if you're at 7.5% or higher, every year you're at that level, you lose 100 days off your lifespan. And I did the math. If it's at that level for 15 years, that is 4 years taken off your lifespan. That's how destructive glucose is. It creates something called advanced glycation end products, AGEs, very appropriately named. And we get AGEs from the SAD diet, the standard American diet, also appropriately named. And it's rare to die from diabetes. Nobody really dies from diabetes. It's the diseases connected to it, cancer, heart disease, strokes, etc. So the question is, how much sugar can the body hold to be considered an optimal state to age gracefully? And this is what the studies show. In your bloodstream, we want about 1 teaspoon of sugar in that fasted state. So if you've ever wore a continuous glucose monitor or tested your blood sugar when you're fasted, that's 80 milligrams per deciliters. Then we have backup reserves. Our liver and muscle cells store sugar too. You can see 25 to 30 teaspoons in your liver, and then skeletal muscle, depending on how much muscle you have, about 100 teaspoons. So we have these reserves, but when you look at what the average American is eating, can we withstand that? These are actual stats. Acai bowl from Jamba Juice has 20 teaspoons of sugar, 99 grams. Lucky Charms, 2 servings have 12 teaspoons of sugar, 60 grams. Oatmeal, which is, by the way, loaded with glyphosate, has 2 servings, is 10.4 teaspoons, 52 grams. And then we have orange juice, 16 ounces, which is 2 cups, 10.4 teaspoons, 52 grams. So, and the average American eats 17 to 23 times a day. If you think about it, the grade, even if it's something healthy, the carrots, whatever it is, but every time you eat something, a snack or a meal, you raise glucose and insulin. The average person does that pretty much every waking hour. So I got this analogy from my friend, Dr. Jason Fung. Does anybody know Dr. Jason Fung, Obesity Code? Yeah, he's terrific. Here's the analogy. This is what's happening. If I grab my phone, which I actually have right here, and I got the Spotify app, and I listen to, what is your favorite musician? You with the cat ears. Kate Bush. Kate Bush, that's from the Strangers, the Stranger Things, her? Yeah, that's right, I remember that, yeah. Okay, Kate Bush. So I grab the phone, and I grab Spotify, and I get Kate Bush playlist. And I start listening to her with my headphones at, let's say, 50% volume. Listen to her music, the same Stranger Things song over and over and over. And after about a week or 2 weeks or so, I don't take a break. I just keep listening to music. What's going to happen? I'm going to feel like the music is getting less. I'm going a little bit deaf. So instead of taking a break, I just increase the volume to 60%. I don't take a break. 2 weeks later, same problem. So I go to 70%. And then imagine this happening for months, and then I'm eventually at 100%. What is going on here? I'm going deaf. So the music, Kate Bush, is the pancreas producing the insulin, shouting at your cells. And the headphones, my ears, are the insulin receptor sites. When we're eating carbs, eating it frequently, you are screaming at your insulin receptor sites over and over and over, and you're becoming deaf to the screams. And it takes 14 years on average for insulin to keep increasing and increasing before the blood sugars change and the person is diagnosed with diabetes. That's why testing your fasting insulin is so important because that's going to change way before the blood sugars. So if that is the cause, what's the solution? Dial down the music. How do you do that? Well, keto and fasting are really powerful ways to do that. Keto in particularly, this study showed, a 6-month study showed that those on a low-carb keto diet at the 6-month mark compared to control diets achieved higher remission in reversing their type 2 diabetes. And they did it in 57% of the patients. This study showed at the 1-year mark, they were able to lower their A1C below that diabetic mark between 49 and 69% of people with just the keto diet. This study showed 2-year data on low-carb diets, 53% reversal, 17% remission, meaning no medication. This is just with the lifestyle change. Now, I looked at drug trials that did something similar. I wanted to see, all right, what are some drug trials that have similar percentages? And you know what I found? This. There's not one that comes close. So you could see why big pharma, big food do not like the idea of people doing keto and fasting because there's a lot of money to be lost. I mean, there was a study that came out just last week from the American Heart Association saying intermittent fasting increases mortality by 91%. And first of all, it's not a study, it was an abstract, and when you look at it, it was based on surveys of what people ate. Who remembers what they ate? Do you remember what you ate yesterday for breakfast or lunch? I mean, nobody remembers this stuff. It's bogus. The headline is going to scare people, and you know why? Because people are healing when they detach themselves from big pharma and big food, which is the last tip here, big care. We live in a world where selling sickness is big business, and now it's a new level, which is creating sickness and disease. Big pharma is big profit. And here's an example of how this works. Somebody goes to Walgreens, in front of the convenience store, they have a whole bunch of convenient food with artificial ingredients. Frankenfoods, food-like substances, and it's cheap, so we eat it. And then we go home, and we experience symptoms. And then our doctors tell us, go back to that same Walgreens, but now go to the back of the store and pick up your medication. So we do that, but we keep continuing to come back and eat the stuff at the front of the store, so then we get a second symptom, and the doctor says, don't worry, just go back to the store and pick up your second medication. What a brilliant business model, right? Very evil, but brilliant. That's the way it works. But the truth is, symptoms are not the problem. They are a gift from the innate intelligence. They're your body's check engine light. Thank God we have the ability to have a check engine light. It's your body's way of communicating to you. Don't look at your symptoms like, oh my gosh, I hate that I have brain fog. I hate that I'm overweight. Those are gifts showing you ate something that took your body out of homeostasis. You thought something. It might be in an environment. It's giving you clues. We don't want to mask it with medication. We want to actually pay attention to it. So a cured patient is a lost customer. That's the truth. And Neville Goddard said, we are only limited by weakness of attention and poverty of imagination. And I'm going to tie this into what I mean. We have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is 95% of your results. And what's filling your subconscious mind is mainstream news, which I call fear porn, social media, friends, family, coworkers, billboards, and TV commercials. This is all weakness of attention. And every Thursday, actually today I made an exception, but every Thursday I have dinner with my mom. If I wasn't here today, I'd be in Miami with my mom and my fiance having dinner, but she said it was okay for me to come here and be with you all day. And every Thursday I have dinner with her, but there's a problem with the dinner. Let me explain why. She has the TV on every time I'm there. And what do I see? All these drug commercials, big food commercials. And I asked the question, I said, oh my gosh, we're just being fed. Our children are being fed this information. And I asked the question, I'm going to ask you this question. What percentage of cable TV commercials here in the United States are funded by big pharma? 50%? Anybody else? 77? 80%? 100%? Who said 77? 77. Yeah, 75%. You're close. It might be 77%. That was in 2020. It might be higher after COVID. But yeah, it's 75%. Then I asked the question, out of the 195 countries, how many of them allow this? How many countries in the world allow this? Yeah, two countries, United States and New Zealand. That's it. Then I asked the question, and let me preface this with, we already know that 75% comes from Big Pharma. That leaves us 25%. Out of that 25%, what if that percentage comes from fast food? 25%. It's somewhere between 11 to 29%. It fluctuates, but pretty much this is what we see on TV. Have high cholesterol? Take this statin. Have high blood pressure? Take this medication. Can't get an erection? Take Viagra. But hey, if you have an erection for more than 4 hours, go see your doctor. Then we have some McDonald's and some Wendy's and some other things sprinkled in there. All of this is going into our subconscious mind. It really is, and it's determining what we're thinking about in our actions and all that. And this is from Tufts University as I'm winding down the presentation here. Tufts University has a doctor named Dr. Darius Mosafarian. And his goal is to implement this food compass. I'm going to share what it means in a second with President Biden to implement this as a food compass with the FDA to guide us on what to eat. And what this shows, items in green, encourage, items in yellow, eat in moderation, items in red, minimize. So we see in green, frosted mini wheats, chocolate-covered almonds, it's right on there, Honey Nut Cheerios, orange juice with calcium. We see in yellow, moderation, egg substitute fried in vegetable oil. We just found out how dangerous vegetable oils are. Canned pineapple with heavy syrup. Lucky Charms is on there. What? It says heavy syrup. That's what it says. But look what it says in red. Butter, eggs cooked in butter, cheddar cheese, and ground beef. So they're telling you that eating Lucky Charms is healthier than ground beef and eggs. Do you believe that? How evil they are, yeah. So here's a good rule of thumb for you. Whatever you see the mainstream teaching you to do in terms of nutrition, do what this guy does. Who knows this guy? Art Vandelay. George Costanza. So Seinfeld episode, he was getting crappy results in his life, and he said, I'm just going to do everything opposite of what I've been doing. And his life changed. He got healthier, happier, developed relationships, doing the opposite. So the George Costanza effect, do the opposite of what they're telling you to do, and you're going to be healthy, because the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and then relearn. That is the truth. Bonus thoughts here. Your thoughts influence health and or disease. We have 60,000 thoughts every day. A lot, right? And psychiatrists estimate that 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts from yesterday. You knew it. And 85% of those thoughts are negative thoughts. Zig Ziglar used to call it stinking thinking. And I say, if your thinking is stinking, your health is shrinking. George Bernard Shaw said 2% of the population think, 3% of the population think they think, and 95% of the population would rather die than think. And your thoughts, Dr. Bruce Lipton, a cell biologist, I had him on my podcast, has proven your thoughts are a frequency that communicate with your DNA. And if it's a negative thought, a hateful thought, an angry thought, the DNA produces inflammatory proteins, shortens your telomeres, and your DNA gets damaged, and you live a short life. But if it's a healthy thought, a loving thought, a grateful thought, same signal sent, protein is anti-inflammatory, telomeres are protected, you live a healthier life. If you have 60,000 thoughts a day, that means you have 60,000 opportunities to put your body in a healing state. And I think that is one of the greatest biohacks. Amen. Rob Proctor said, thoughts become things. If you could see it in your mind, you will hold it in your hand. And you are the most influential person you'll speak to today. This is a supplement I recommend you take every day. I'm going to speed through this because my time is running out here. But it's called vitamin G. And vitamin G, Dr. Joe Dispenza has shown it protects your immune system. I don't have time to cover the study, but it builds up IgA, lowers cortisol. And it also, he has seen 1,200 chemical reactions take place when you take it. Serotonin, GABA, oxytocin, puts the body in a healing state. This study showed vitamin G lowers blood pressure. This study showed it lowers blood sugar levels. Where can you get vitamin G? What is vitamin G? Gratitude. It's the practice of gratitude. Vitamin G, it is the practice of gratitude. Feeling, those are real studies on feeling gratitude. And what you appreciate appreciates. This is a universal law. What you feed energy to expands. If you don't believe me, this is the last 40-second video, and then we're done. Believe her. Watch this.
How do you think you've lived to be 97? Like, how do you think you made it this many years?
I don't know. Because I'm naughty. I eat sugar. I eat butter. I eat things that I should not eat. And I have all my life.
Well, what do you think is the secret? You know, people ask me and I tell them that you pray a lot, you have faith.
I do have faith, yes. I really spend, like, I cannot end my day without being grateful. I never take anything for granted.
So that's probably the secret. That's how you've lived to be 97.
I don't know.
Because you never end your day without being grateful.
I don't know. I really don't.
You have a lot of gratitude in your heart.
Yes.
She's amazing. I love that lady. She's incredible. That's what vitamin G does. I want you to get your right hand, put it over your right ear. Hold it there. Leave it there as I say this, okay? Your body was built to heal itself. Everything you need to heal is already within you. It's not external. You are a masterpiece because you are a piece of the master. You could remove the hand. Why did I have you do that? I didn't want it to go in one ear and out the other ear, so keep it there. Thank you guys so much. I have vitamin G for you all. Thank you. I know that we might be long in time here. I went a little bit longer. I apologize for the Q&A. Yeah.
Yes, we have time.
Okay, we have time. Good.
Thank you, Ben. Yes. So the first question I have coming from the internet, from online, and it's a question regarding ApoB. ApoB.
Yeah.
What do you have any comments or thoughts on ApoB blood tests?
Yeah, it's valuable, especially if you have certain genetic SNPs. It's valuable to get that blood test. It's going to show you don't want that elevated. But I would look at that in the context of a full cholesterol panel, not just total cholesterol. We made the case that that's pretty meaningless, but also HDL and triglycerides. HDL is protective. Triglycerides are inflammatory, and you want to get both those markers, and you want to look at the ratios of your triglycerides divided by your HDL, and you want that to be a 1.5 ratio or less. That shows protective benefits. And then you also want to get LDL, but you want to get your LDL particles done to see if the majority of your LDL are the pattern B, small sticky, which is problematic, pattern A. So ApoB is great, but look at it in the context of the other markers and also look at inflammatory markers, and then you could get a full picture.
A question back here from Dave.
Could you tell me what you think of a carnivore's diet? And number two, do you believe that being a carnivore, you get diabetes and heart attack and things like that?
Yeah, my book, Keto Flex, has a whole chapter on carnivore. I'm a big fan of it. I just did 90 days of carnivore myself as an experiment. 90 straight days of just meat and fat. I just did it. I did a $3,500 lab test on day 1, same test on day 90. I did a stool test day 1, day 90, put on a continuous glucose monitor. And I'm about to reveal all my studies, not studies, but my research on it. And it was phenomenal for my health. I even had Philip Ovadia, the cardiologist, review my results, and he said, you are like the lowest risk I've seen of heart disease. So carnivore diet is a great healing tool short term. Great for the gut. You eliminate these anti-nutrients from plants. You restore the gut. You lower inflammation. I don't believe in it long term, though. Although I have friends who do it long term, I don't believe in it long term. I don't think it's going to lead to diabetes. I don't think it's going to lead to cancer. Now, if you're eating meat every 2 to 3 hours, it could be a problem. But most of the time when you do carnivore, you're so satiated, you end up eating once or twice a day. So I'm a big fan of it short term, 30 to 90 days.
Question over here from Pat.
Do you have a comment on the role of barley in reducing C-reactive protein?
I don't. I haven't seen anything on that. I could tell you that one of the fastest ways I've seen C-reactive protein lower is with something like a carnivore diet, intermittent fasting, and also just eating clean food and staying away from toxins. I don't know anything about barley lowering it. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just haven't seen anything like that.
Question back here from Johnny.
Are ketone supplements good to take, particularly like in the morning when you first wake up? I'll name one. HVMN is one brand.
Yeah, I actually just had their scientists on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. He flew to Miami to record a podcast with me. I actually love their product, Ketone IQ. I see their role, but not to substitute getting your body to produce the ketones as well. because that's where you get the metabolism to change itself. But as far as like getting some ketones in the morning before a workout to start your day, big fan of it, and I love the one from HVMN as well.
Another question back here.
Yes, I'd like to know why the keto diet is better than the one where you don't eat meat, the vegan diet.
I think all diets work, actually, but not long term. I think there's a place for a vegan diet, short term. I think there's a place for a keto diet, short term, and a carnivore diet. The reason why keto works better for most people than a vegan diet is because so many people have something called leaky gut. Their digestive system is compromised from primarily glyphosate, but other things. And when you eat a lot of vegetables with leaky gut, it makes things worse. It allows food particles to go undigested and enter your bloodstream, and it creates an autoimmune response. So for most people, they have that issue, and keto and carnivore help to remove or eliminate that. But then once you fix the gut, you could go back to a vegan diet, but I wouldn't stay there long term. You know, our ancestors, ancient cultures always varied their nutrition. They did keto, they did vegan, they did carnivore, they did different dietary approaches based off of where they were seasonally. So I think they're all great short term. I'm not a fan of any of them long term, personally.
Question over here from David.
Great presentation, by the way. Thank you very much. You mentioned intermittent fasting. No, could you elaborate on that, please, a little?
Yeah, there's different ways to fast. There's intermittent fasting. Some people also call it time-restricted feeding, right? 18-6 or 16-8 is a good schedule. So 18 hours fasted, 6-hour eating window. The studies show, though, in terms of longevity and autophagy and sirtuins getting activated, if your eating window is earlier in the day, you'll get more benefits than if it's later in the day. So the studies, we're looking at Alabama Birmingham study by Courtney Peterson. They took these two test groups. One group had the same fasting schedule as the other group, but their difference was that they ate between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. That was their eating window. The other group ate between 2 p.m. and I believe it was 8 p.m. So same fasting window, same eating window, same food and calories. They controlled everything. And after 4 days, the group that ate earlier had 22% more autophagy, which is the cell repair, and their sirtuins were activated by 11% more, which protects your cells and your DNA. So I'm a big fan of it. When you do it earlier in the day, that's better. But I understand, like, we're going to eat later, and there's dinners and all that. There's exceptions there, but fasting is terrific. I love it. Yeah.
There's a question from Michelle.
Hey, how you doing? Great.
Oh, there you are.
Great lecture.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I believe I self-diagnosed leaky gut syndrome, and I kind of understand why I ended up there. But the main question is, I believe I cured it. I had a lot of doctors, holistic, conventional, and gastroenterologists that told me, oh, no, there's no such thing. Well, what is your best recommendation as far as how to cure? Because I was using amino acids, L-glutamine, things like this to help me to heal my gut.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you might add to that?
Yeah, well, you could always test to verify with a stool test, like Gut Zoomer by Vibrant Wellness Labs. Great stool test for your gut. And carnivore is really great for that. I did a gut test, as I mentioned, on day 1 of carnivore on day 90, and I'll just share this real quick. When I did the gut test, it's a stool test on day 1, and then I started carnivore. The results came in like 3 weeks later. And the results said my gut diversity, which is the key for longevity, you want a diverse gut microbiome, was okay. It was kind of average. It wasn't great. It wasn't dangerous. And the recommendation was to eat more plants, more prebiotics, more fiber. Don't do keto, less red meat. What did I do? I did the complete opposite. I was already in my carnivore experiment. I was in continuous ketosis for 90 days, and I didn't have one carb or a fiber for 90 days. So what happened on day 90 when I retested? Everything in my gut improved. My diversity improved. I developed 7 keystone bacteria on day 90 that I didn't have on day 1. As a matter of fact, the chief scientific officer of this company saw my results and he said, I need to hop on a Zoom call with you about this. Changed the complete way he thinks about gut health, right? Because I stressed my gut. When you stress your gut, it creates diversity. But if I would have stayed with carnivore for 6 months or a year, then I would have had the opposite effect. So you want to stress the gut. Carnivore does it. It doesn't have to be 90 days. It could be 30 days or 15 days. Fasting does it. Cold exposure does it. Sauna does it, heat exposure, and exercise. These are and red light therapy. These are all things that help stress the gut.
Blood type, eat right, feel blood type. I'm a carnivore, I'm a no blood type. Do you believe in that?
I haven't seen anything that has convinced me to put too much value into that. I might change my mind, but I don't put much energy into that. Nothing has really convinced me on that. The data seems to be kind of weak for me, but unless somebody shares something different with me, I'm not a big believer in it. Yeah.
Wonderful lecture, thank you. Do the blue zone studies, are they consistent with your findings?
There's a lot of flaws with the blue zone studies. Number one, they have, you know, what they have in common, they have community, like you guys have here. That is very important. They have vitamin G in common, gratitude. They also consume, at least a couple of those countries, or a few of them, consume a high amount of goat and sheep dairy. Why is that significant? Well, 30% of goat and sheep dairy is medium chain triglycerides, and it actually helps you produce ketones. And ketones help to uncouple the mitochondria and produce energy. It's not as simple as they eat less meat, eat more plants, and this is why they live a long life. There's also genetics involved, because a lot of the people that live in the blue zones have generations in different families, and they kind of stay in that place. So there's a lot of flaws with it. I think it's more hype than anything else. I think the documentary is really well done, like a lot of these vegan documentaries. But when you actually analyze it, at least when I did, it didn't make sense to me. It really didn't. Hope that helps.
Question over here with Chase.
You mentioned your slide for oils to avoid fish oil. I was wondering if you could specify a little more on that. I think I saw something saying specifically a lot of fish oil brands that people were buying, a lot of it was rancid. I don't know if you mean specifically if it's rancid or if it's prone to being rancid. If that's the difference, if you just explain that.
Yeah, I always get asked that when I bring up the fish oil thing. That's something that a lot of my colleagues, maybe some of the speakers here might disagree with me about, but I used to be a big fish oil guy. My first book talked about the benefits of it. I used to have my clients take it. But then when I dug into the research, number one, like you said, 83% of fish oil supplements are rancid on the shelf before you even purchase it, 83%. But then the argument is, all right, but Ben, what about the 17% of companies that are organic, cold processed, they test for heavy metals, which is what you want to do. But here's the other problem. That fish oil is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, just like a vegetable oil. And I mentioned the problem with vegetable oils is that they contain a lot of these double bonds, which makes them really unstable. Fish oil have more double bonds than vegetable oil. They're even more unstable. But you're not heating it, Ben. Okay, but your body temperature is pretty warm, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So you take a healthy fish oil, put it in your body, mixes with body temperature, mixes with stomach acid, then you oxidize the fat, turns into a rancid fat, and then it becomes a seed oil, essentially. Let's say that's not even the problem. The National Institutes of Health say the average 6-foot male should consume about 7.2 milligrams of EPA and DHA each day. That's what's in fish oil, EPA and DHA, 7.2 milligrams. What's in the average capsule of fish oil? 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA. People are taking 2-3 capsules. That's a super physiological overdose of omega-3. And when you take a lot of omega-3, it destabilizes the cell membrane and the mitochondrial membrane, and it creates problems. So I do love fish oil when it's in the fish. Once it's extracted, it's a problem.
Any comments on black cumin seed oil and evening primrose oil and any of those for health?
Those are amazing if they're cold pressed organic and you're not heating them up. They're great. Andrea's Seed Oils is a great company that makes some good ones. Dark glass bottle as well. They're super fresh. Seed oils are not bad. Omega-6 is not bad. It's the ones that are adulterated. It's the ones that are heated up. Andrea's Seed Oils. They make high quality Andrea's Seed Oils. They make high quality omega-6 fats right here.
Oh, you're going to go here to Dr. Howard.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great presentation. Really loved it, man. Two things. Yeah, I was going to say eat fish.
Yeah, eat the fish.
Walnuts and other wonderful
and eggs too. You get it from eggs
absolutely.
as well. Yeah.
But I was going to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment. The young lady, the young 97-year-old lady, said she never ends her day without gratitude. Well, I say never start your day without gratitude.
Yeah, amen to that. I do the same thing. I love that. Yeah, seriously, that's awesome. I love it.
I have two questions. One is what's castor oil. What do you think of that? I mean, people are raving about it, and I started to put it on my face in the evening.
Yeah, big fan of castor oil.
So it's really good.
I use it every night on my liver. I put it on the pack, put it over my liver.
You do that, yes.
Helps, because if you do it before bed, between 1 and 3 a.m. is liver time in Chinese medicine. That liver is dumping bile and detoxifying. So overnight, I'll put the castor oil pack over my liver. Great for detoxification. You could also put it on your skin. Just don't consume it or heat it up. But yeah, it's great for skin, great for the liver.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I use Queen of Thrones. That's the company I use, Queen of Thrones.
Oh, okay. The other thing is, I always had a very high good cholesterol. And a doctor told me years ago that you're never going to have a problem with your heart with that, what you have there. You know, my ratio is always really good.
Awesome.
Well, it creeped up, went over 200. It was a
total cholesterol?
248 or something like that. But still, the ratio was good. Now, they put me on a statin to get it down. It went down under 200, and the doctor was thrilled. Oh, look what happened to you. This is good for you. And he was saying that it really isn't good.
Yeah.
So now I've been taking the statin for about a year, a very low dose, the lowest dose.
Yeah.
And I'm about to, I'm about to reorder the prescription. Maybe I should just,
I would say that I can't make the decision for you, but I would say if you're gonna be on a statin, take CoQ10.
I am taking
CoQ10. Take CoQ10.
I
My total cholesterol on day one before carnivore was 290, under 300. After carnivore, I went to 434. My total LDL was 150 on day one, and I went to 350 on day 90.
Wow.
And I'm not concerned at all. I had even Dr. Philip Ovadia review my results because the LDL particles were all the large and fluffy good kind, and the total cholesterol was meaningless. I was just eating a whole bunch of fat. Obviously, it's going to raise my total cholesterol. And then my HDL was optimal, triglycerides were optimal. My insulin was 3.9, super sensitive. So anyways, there's a lot of moving parts to it. If you're going to remain on the statin, CoQ10 is a must. If you decide to get off of it, that's great too. Just retest your results and see what happens. And stick with the CoQ10. It's always
time for 3 more questions here. Oh, I've got 1, 2, and 3.
You're welcome.
So in regards to fish oil again, my understanding is that the brain has quite a bit of, I think it's a DHA. And I also read a study that said that people that took fish oil actually prevented brain shrinkage. And it is anti-inflammatory, apparently, and it has a lot of other benefits. So is it just the amount or what? Well, assuming it's good.
There could be a short-term benefit with good fish oil if you're deficient in omega-3. And what happened? And you mentioned anti-inflammatory. It acts like a steroid. But what happens when you take a steroid long-term? It's a problem, right? So it's always better to get it from the fish. Is my point. There can be a short-term benefit from high-quality fish oil. I don't personally do that though. I just get it from the fish. If you eat fish once or twice a week, you get enough that you need. Yeah. No, it's not a problem when you cook the fish. The problem is when they extract it, it becomes very unstable. When you cook the fish and heat it up, it's protected. Yeah, it's a good question.
Question over here.
Yeah, hi. My father, we invented Superfloss, so we're into preventative tooth decay and stuff. I use an electric toothbrush, and I have for years, and using fluoride, regular toothpaste. And I never knew this, never, ever. So, is there anything that you can suggest for me, like maybe an organic or anything? There's another alternative.
Yeah,
I really wasn't aware.
Yeah, me too. I used to use fluoride toothpaste and antiseptic mouthwash for years. Primal Life Organics. Check them out. They make some really good toothpaste. That's one good brand. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Primal Life Organics, and then Revitin, Revitin is another great toothpaste as well. Those are 2 good brands. Yeah.
And we have time for one more question we're going to take back here. There are several of you that have questions. I'd like to ask you, just go ahead and email me your questions, and I'll send them over to Ben. I'll get you connected. As you can see, his information is also there on the screen. Feel free to connect him with them as well. Johnny.
Closely related question, now that you've reminded of the importance of the oral microbiome. What oral or dental care program do you do?
I have a biological dentist in South Miami. His name is Dr. Theodore Herman, and his clinic is called Assura Smile. So I visit him all the time. In terms of what I've been doing with him, he removed my silver amalgam filling safely. I had 8 of them, so he removed 4 and then 4. Then I detoxed the mercury out. I'm wearing an appliance right now to change the structure of my face because it's too, inside it's too narrow. And then I'm gonna be able to straighten my teeth. So I'm working with a lot of things with him in that aspect, and then of course like the cleanings every 6 months. So I have a biological dentist that I work with. Oh, sorry, daily. Yeah, floss, brush. I don't water pick, but that's not a bad idea. But I brush every day. I brush after every meal, and I floss after every meal. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Azadi.
Yes, thank you guys. Thank you.
We're going to do a microphone swap. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
I'm going to tell you about our next speaker is Dr. Joseph Purita. Dr. Purita graduated from Georgetown University Medical School and served his surgical internship at the University of Florida Medical Center. Go Gators! Following completion of a residency in orthopedic surgery at the University of Miami Jackson Memorial Hospital, where he served as chief administrative resident. Dr. Purita joined the Boca Raton Orthopedic Group in 1981. He is a pioneer in the use of stem cell and platelet-rich plasma for orthopedic conditions. Dr. Purita has lectured internationally on 5 continents regarding the healing effects of stem cells and has been instrumental in helping some countries design their policies concerning the use of regenerative medicine, effectively bringing this unique and advanced practice to more practices throughout the world. Dr. Purita, his passions lie in teaching and advancing regenerative medicine techniques and procedures that improve patients' lives. His presentation tonight is Intermittent Hypoxia Therapy and Mitochondrial Health. Please, again, make note of your questions as we will have a question and answer session at the end. Help me welcome Dr. Purita. Dr. Joseph Purita. Okay.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. It's actually a treat for me because usually I'm not interested. I'm usually getting stuck talking to a bunch of docs. So it's nice to talk to the everyday people. Anyway, I'm not talking about stem cells, but because I did a lot of work with stem cells, it taught me about the pathways. And just think of your body as and your organs and the cells as the computer hardware, and the pathways are the computer software. And that's really what we're trying to do, what we try and reverse aging and this and that and everything. So let's get on. I've got a lot of slides and there's a lot of science, and I'm more than happy to give anybody a copy of my slides. So basically, and this is a good thing because this kind of segues with the previous talk that we heard about, in that, we're talking about intermittent hypoxia, intermittent fasting, et cetera. So here we can see the mitochondria right there. So it's just kind of a general review for you. A lot of science, but it's something you need to know. If you're really interested in slowing down aging, really interested in your health, it all funnels down to the mitochondria. If your mitochondria are healthy, you're healthy. If they're not, you've got a problem. All right, so you can see here's some of the anatomy that we can see. You can see the ribosomes, you can see the matrix, you can see, it's a very complex structure. But we think a mitochondria is really kind of a derivative from a bacterium. Somehow or other, a bacterium went into the cell and became part of it, and it became a mitochondria. Another way of looking at a mitochondria, it's like a chloroplast in a plant. It gets, light and converts it to energy. Mitochondria are very sensitive to light. I'm giving a talk in Las Vegas in June on something called photobiomodulation, basically how these things affect the cells in the body. So you can see what some of the things are here. What does mitochondria do? Well, it gets rid of some of our epinephrine. It helps with our fatty acids. We were hearing about that there. It's something called oxidative phosphorylation. Remember back in high school, the Krebs cycle and all those stupid things? Well, that's how your body makes energy. It makes something called ATP, which is the body's energy currency. We'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. So mitochondrial DNA, interestingly enough, the DNA in your mitochondria is different than the rest of your DNA. And also what's interesting is you never get any mitochondrial DNA from your dad. It's always from your mom. So blame your mom for your health or not health, So basically, so you can see here, here's a difference. You can see it here. Maybe I can point it out to you guys a bit more. I guess doesn't shine too well, but you can see the difference. Nuclear DNA is basically 3 billion base pairs. Mitochondrial DNA is about 16,000. This is a big difference. Also look at the shape. Things like that, it's circular, okay? So kind of one of the interesting things about it. Now, here's some interesting stuff that we're talking about here, okay? And I'll talk about this again a little later on. We can talk about AMPK, we can talk about insulin, IGF, insulin growth factor. Anybody here ever take HGH, human growth hormone? You know what? Well, it can fuel cancer, but IGF or HGH is not necessarily anti-aging. It speeds up cell division. So if you look here, it actually premature aging. So you want to kind of block these things. And certain ways that we can manipulate the mitochondria can help in that. Okay? Now here's something called the electron transport chain. Kind of complicated, but this is how we make energy. And this is where a lot of diseases come into place here. Okay, so we heard a little bit before somebody was taking statins. They said, oh, take CoQ10. All right, so there you can see it right there, CoQ10. All right, then we have cytochrome C oxidase. This is an area where basically these hydrogen atoms basically go and help make ATP. But here's where we start seeing some significance. Also something called methylene blue, which I can talk to you about later. But look at this here. This is where our neurodegenerative diseases really come into play. Look at here, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS. They all basically, they're neurodegenerative diseases, but they basically are because of the mitochondria. And it's because certain parts of that electron transport chain, the 4 parts, become diseased. Now you also have over here accumulation of misguided proteins. A field that we're really getting into now is something called heat and cold shock proteins. How important is it? Extremely important, because if a protein doesn't fold properly into the cell is not going to function properly. We think it probably has a lot to do with these very neurodegenerative diseases. It has a lot to do with people having diabetes because that receptor of the cell didn't fold properly, and now it doesn't respond to insulin, et cetera. Now, free radicals. What's a free radical? Well, we can see here you have basically paired electrons. All of a sudden, one becomes unpaired. It's like a renegade. It's a terrorist in your body. It wants to do damage. And if you can pair that with an antioxidant, that'll take care of it. Now you can see here. Here's what can happen. And it's interesting. Speaking of antioxidants, anybody know what one of the strongest antioxidants is out there? Which? No? Close. Good, but no cigar. All right, I'll give you a clue that I always used to give when I gave a talk to the lay public. This is something you give your sweetheart on a certain day in February. But what kind? Dark chocolate. Exactly. All right, so there we go there. Now here we have, there's sirtuins. There was a little bit of talk about that in the previous lecture. Sirtuins are very important. They're enzymes. They're basically transcription factors. Look at all the things that they do. SIRT1 to SIRT7. Some of them are found in the mitochondria. Some of them are found outside the mitochondria in the cytoplasm. So look at all the things they do. If your sirtuins are working properly, you're going to be in pretty good health. Now, what stimulates them? A lot of things. We know resveratrol is a good thing. Problem with resveratrol, not good bioavailability. I like Herstilbin better. I think that can work a little better. And then you can see some of the things here. They basically help with DNA repair, mitochondrial function, cell cycle control, how a cell can reproduce, et cetera. A lot of different things there. So basically, this is a little scientific there, but they help regulate gene expression. They help basically keep our genes stable. And they really do so many different things for our overall health. Okay? You can see here, they help mitochondrial biogenesis. You need to make new mitochondria. You know, they do wear out. They help with energy. They help with oxidative stress. Remember, we breathe oxygen. And because we breathe oxygen, we make oxidative stress. And they help with mitophagy, making new mitochondria. And so what else can they do? Well, what can stimulate them? Intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, really good thing for you. Resveratrol, like I say, exercise, One of the best medicines you could ever do. If you ask me what's one of the most important medicines I could ever recommend to you, exercise. My day starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. I read. I'm out at 5, do about 4 miles, back doing my elliptical for about 25 minutes, then swimming, and then I get to my office 7 days a week, except I don't go to the office 7 days. All right, so NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. You got it. Very, very important, okay? You can't take NAD orally. We sometimes will use NAD intravenously in our office, but there's some very good precursors out there, nicotinamide ribose and MNN. Okay, they're both good ones. You know, whatever one you want, I think they're both good. You can take either one. Okay, so what does the body use NAD for? Well, certainly it helps with energy production and respiration. DNA repair, that's the real key. You know, our DNA levels diminish every 20 years of life by 50%. So 20%, 20, 50%. So it keeps going down and down and down. You talk to Dr. Sinclair, he'll tell you the NAD is so important for your health. Okay? And I'm a firm believer of that. And again, it has to do DNA repair, but your cells also need it to make energy. So what happens? DNA repair takes a sidetrack. When DNA repair doesn't get done, damage accumulates, and what do you get? Cancers, things like that. So you can see the importance. And here's some of the ways. Again, healthy diet, fasting, all sorts of things there. Okay? Now, what is ATP? You know, ATP is not really kind of what we think it is. It really basically is an energy carrier. It's not a long-term energy storage, okay? It's kind of gets used right away, more or less, okay? And again, see here's some of the key facts. It's used for energy storage. It's used for energy utilization and basically regeneration of ATP also. Now, again, this is kind of getting a little crazy here, but basically there's 2 ways your body makes ATP. It can do a very inefficient way where it kind of does what we call anaerobic. It doesn't really use oxygen. It only makes a little bit of ATP. When we use oxygen, we make 36 versus 2. But the price is we're making a lot of oxidative stress because we use oxygen. Okay, so basically, how does our body use ATP? Well, for metabolism, for transport of cells, muscle contractions, cell signaling. It's a very important signaling molecule. You know, there's a lot of things. Again, we start talking about the cell pathways and things like that. Now, here's a very interesting thing about the mitochondria. You know, as you heard, interestingly enough, one of my real passions is doing stem cells. And we think now one of the real ways that stem cells are going to work and going to work even better are that they're going to actually transfer a mitochondria from a healthy cell to a sick cell. And you can see that here. So what happens if you've got this mitochondria that's going to be transferred, and all of a sudden it's going to make that cell healthier. Okay? And this is really where it's at. This is, I think, is going to be one of the big things we're going to see, how it's really mitochondria that we're transferring. Okay? And then there's fusion and fission. So you can see here, you have a fusion where you're basically taking a few mitochondria and you're putting them together, and then you have fission where you're breaking them apart. Usually, fusion is the more healthy alternative, okay? And we can see, you know, again, these are slides that you can look at your leisure, because I'm more than happy to give everybody a copy of those. Okay? So there's the difference. Fusion is new mitochondria, or I should say is new mitochondria that basically form from many. We can go from there. Now, mitophagy, very important thing. You need to recirculate your mitochondria. You need to basically go after them, get rid of the bad guys, and recirculate their parts and make new ones out of it. You can see some of the ways that you can do that here. And this is mitophagy right here. Now, to me, one of the best supplements out there for mitophagy is urolithin A. It comes from basically pomegranate, but it's not going to help you to eat pomegranate. It's kind of a crazy thing. It has to be processed in the gut, more or less. There are supplements out there, and I'm a big believer of this. I think this is really where it's at. All right, so now we go to part 2. Now, part 2, you're going to say, wait a minute. Like I said this once when I was giving a talk to the docs. People are going to say, is this guy nuts? He's going to be talking about anti-aging. He's talking about hypoxia. How can hypoxia, low oxygen, be conducive to reducing your age? Does anybody know what animal has the longest longevity in the world? Which kind of whale? The bowhead whale. Now look at this. There's some bowhead whales in the ocean right now that were alive before the Declaration of Independence was signed. Okay? And there's a reason for that. Okay? And one ties in kind of with our other lecture. And one is intermittent fasting, because these whales live in an area where there's not that much food sometimes. And intermittent hypoxia. They'll take a deep breath. They'll go down in sound for quite some time. So they're not really getting a whole bunch of oxygen. Their body's adapted to that. So basically, what do? Employ a mitochondrial rejuvenating pathway. Now it starts to kind of set in. You say, wait a minute. Let's try and see what these guys do. How do they do this? Let's look at some more facts about hypoxia. Well, when we're developing inside our mothers, basically the PO2 that we are subjected to is the same PO2 as about 19,000 feet. Pretty interesting. You know, you look at some of these communities that live at very high levels, you know, some of them have an average life expectancy of 120 years. You look at in the Andes, you know, after 14,000 feet, when they did autopsy on these people, they said, there's no heart disease. What's going on? Something's not right here. And, you know, you can see this. So basically, there was a Nobel Prize in 2019 on how cells sense oxygen. And that's the real key, because, again, it's all the pathways. If we start resetting these pathways and fooling the body a little bit, biohacking the body, it can really make some interesting things. So what is it? You know, first of all, like a lot of the things that we do for biohacking and things like that, they came from the former Soviet Union. You know, that's why, if you remember years ago, it was always East Germany, USSR, the United States, always at the top of the Olympics, because they knew how to biohack these pathways and things like that. So what is intermittent hypoxia? It's repeated episodes of hypoxia with intervening periods of recovery, either normoxia or hyperoxia. Okay, so you've kind of been exposed to this before. You know, basically, what's the traditional standard? You know, you'd basically go, you know, in altitude. And that's why, you know, an athlete, a lot of the elite athletes say, hey, I'm going to go train off season. I'm going to go train in Denver, you know, 5,000 feet high, because it's going to give me a break. It's going to make me stronger. Why? Yeah, well, because we're going to get into that in a little bit. Okay. So basically, there's a big difference between chronic hypoxia, which is associated with many different diseases, and intermittent hypoxia, okay? And basically, chronic hypoxia is a hallmark of cancer. It's a hallmark of sleep apnea. That's why they say sleep apnea is so dangerous for you, because it creates continuous intermittent hypoxia. So here we are here. Now, basically, it's a cyclic reduction of oxygen. Now, this is a very important concept. It's a concept that no matter who's going to be lecturing to you at your meetings here, this is going to have a bearing on it, essentially. It's called a hormesis effect. Basically, it's all related to dosage. You can see here, we're talking about here, here's normoxia, regular room air. And if we have sustained moderate hypoxia, not too much has happened. And look at this, intermittent hypoxia, we're getting an optimal gain. Now we also start getting it here, all of a sudden we have problems. And then we see here, if the hypoxia is too high, we have a problem. But let's go to the next slide. So basically, this is the hormesis effect right here. So you have a certain level where you get the best benefit, a low stress, okay? And, you know, stress in the body is a very good thing. Some oxidative stress is good for you. Too much is very bad. Too little, it's not going to do much. So it has to be that little, basically little area right there that we can see, okay? So, again, we have a stress. It's a low dose stress. That cell can respond, it can adapt, and it can repair. If it's a high dose stress, cell damage, cell death, and all sorts of problems occur. Now, here is a very classic article, and I like to give articles because, again, we're trying to talk about the science. So, the effects of intermittent hypoxia versus chronic hypoxia. Now, what happened there? Okay, well, interestingly enough, intermittent hypoxia induced telomerase reverse transcriptase. What does that do? Essentially makes your telomeres longer. That's pretty good stuff, okay? And then intermittent hypoxia did essentially the opposite. So let's kind of go into that. Short telomeres. We can see all the problems with short telomeres right here. Arthritis, stress, stem cell problems, metabolic diseases, cancer, infertility, on and on and on. But when you have more of that telomerase, all of a sudden, a lot of good things happen, except, there's no free lunch. You also have this one little problem here, promotes invasion and metastases. Well, a lot of things that are going to be anti-aging are also going to have that same effect. They're going to give some cancer cells immortality. But I still think, in general, it's a much better thing for you to do. All right, so basically, intermittent hypoxia or hypoxia itself is an extremely important inducer of gene expression, metabolic changes, and basically regenerative processes, okay? And the fluctuations of oxygen concentration that the body senses are what puts these pathways into the existence. Okay, so basically we do a balancing act between oxygen demand and oxygen supply. And there's something called the hypoxia-inducible factors. Again, a little bit of technical stuff, but we need to talk about it. So what these are basically what we call hypoxia-inducible factors. What are they? They're transcription factors. What's the transcription factors? It transcribes. What does it do? It gives direction to the genes. It tells the gene, I want you to make these compounds because this is what's going to be needed. This patient has to reduce his inflammation. You have to produce antioxidant response compounds. So we can see here, here's a transcription factor. A little bit of a technical thing. I have the next slide that's a little easier to understand. So we have these things here, okay? So these are the genes, the DNA right here. You have an activator, and a repressor. Well, if you have an activator, you're going to get transcription. It's going to give directions to the genes and tell it what to do. If you have this repressor, nothing's going to happen. This is the field, possibly the most important field that I think we're going to see in the next decade, the field of epigenetics. How we can give direction to the genes. When we age, certain genes get turned off, certain genes get turned on. If we can manipulate those, we've got some good things that are going to happen. All right, so basically, what happens with these hypoxia-inducible factors? Well, you can see here, here's basically what's happening in the cytoplasm. If there's a lot of oxygen, it binds this factor up, it just keeps it there, and it goes on to destruction. However, if we restrict the amount of oxygen, all of a sudden, this guy can now go into the nucleus where the action is. It's the big city, so to speak. And it can then go ahead and start giving directions and say, you make this, you make this, you make this, and magic starts to happen. Okay, so basically we can see here. So you have these factors out here in the cytoplasm. Remember, that's the kind of the watery part around the nucleus. It gets into the nucleus, then it starts doing all these things. It makes angiogenesis, new blood vessels. Okay, it can do erythropoiesis, red blood cells. It can help cell proliferation, glucose metabolism, and basically the formation of proteins. So again, all the things that this comes into being right here. Now again, oncogenesis, it can also make a, tumor sometimes, so you have to be careful. Now, erythropoietin, this is one hormone, so to speak, that this process will make. Now, erythropoietin you may or may not know about, but that's what got Lance Armstrong into trouble. He was injecting himself with erythropoietin. He was basically blood doping because with this erythropoietin, his body made a lot more red blood cells, gave more oxygen carrying capacity and better endurance, and basically allowed him to win the races. If he only would have known to do this, he would have been legal. He would have been fine. A lot of the athletes know about this now, and they're starting to do this stuff. So here we can see now, erythropoietin just doesn't make red blood cells. It helps the heart. It helps muscles. Helps your bone. It helps the brain. It does all sorts of things there. All right, so basically another thing is VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. It helps make new blood vessels. That's the bottom line. I mean, again, it's a kind of complicated slide there. But here's an important aspect, and this is one that most of the docs have no idea about. So you can see here you have something called angiogenesis, where if you have some blood vessels, we can make new ones. But if you don't have any blood vessels, we can, I should say, if you have some blood vessels, we can expand them. If you don't have any blood vessels, we can make new ones. Okay? But that usually is from using stem cells. All right, so now there's something called hemoxygenase 1. Now, this is an important enzyme in our body, and it affects something called macrophages. Macrophages are a form of white blood cell, more or less. But these cells can actually help regenerate tissue. And that's an important aspect of things. Now, hemoxygenase 1 is a very important enzyme because it can have profound effects on your body. What it can do is it can cause a marked diminution of inflammation in the body. But look at one of the things it makes, carbon monoxide. Bottom line is you can't really survive without carbon monoxide in your body. It's an important signaling molecule. But we now go back to that hormesis effect. A certain dose of carbon monoxide is very beneficial. Too much is deadly. So it's all the body trying to do these things. Now, another thing that the intermittent hypoxia makes is something called the p53 gene. Anybody familiar with that here? What do you know about it? Tumor suppressor gene. What's the problem that we have? Well, it can repair, or it just says, hey, you're no good, I'm going to get rid of you. The problem is we don't have enough copies of it. Very good slide right here. Look at what the incidence of elephants, who are usually big animals, about 5% incidence of cancers in them versus people. You would think it should be the opposite around. But look at the number of p53 copies in an elephant versus a human. So anything we can do to stimulate that p53, pretty beneficial. Okay, so basically nitric oxide. We heard a little bit about that. Nitric oxide is a very important signaling molecule. Why I like it as a stem cell guy, among other things, it causes your bone marrow to release more stem cells into the circulation, things like that. So basically has a lot of effects on the stem cells, hypoxia. Now here's something interesting. This stimulates something called very small embryonic-like stem cells. These are cells in your body that are your own, but they're very much like an embryonic cell. They have very pristine DNA. They basically can repair almost any kind of cell. They're like an embryonic cell, but they're your own cells. We use them in my office quite often. We get them from your blood, and you can see here, here's a way we do it. And interestingly enough, very small embryonic-like cells, potential to win the three-front war on damage, cancer, and aging. And this is not an old article. This is from, I think, 2023, excuse me. So we use these cells. They come from your blood. We have to stimulate them. We use phacoidin and things like that to stimulate them and go from there. Now, another thing that these V cells do is they reverse immunosenescence. When all is said and done, that's probably where most of our problems arise. When our immune system starts to go down the tube, so to speak, that's when we get in trouble, because it can't fight off certain diseases and cancers and things like that. But we think that these cells will reverse immunosenescence. So another interesting thing about intermittent hypoxia is some of the systemic things that we have, especially when it comes to maybe weight reduction, interestingly enough, okay? So you can see here something called, some of the effects that you can get from intermittent hypoxia. It can help decrease body weight. It kind of suppresses your appetite. Those of you who've been skiing, when you go to the skiing, you say, I just don't have my appetite for the first couple of days. It's because of the intermittent hypoxia that you're getting, okay? So basically, it can control your glucose and things like that. But we can move on here. Okay, leptin. Leptin's a very important thing. As we lose weight, what happens is the leptin starts going down, and then all of a sudden, we start getting a rebound, and we get even more and more hungry. That's why the people who are on the semaglutides eventually are going to be in trouble, because of the fact that they're going to get this rebound and they're actually going to gain more weight. Intermittent hypoxia is probably going to help solve that, because it can decrease leptin levels, but it decreases the leptin sensitivity, and it can really help with weight loss, okay? And again, you can see there's the relationship there. So let me move on to some of the other things. It also helps with mitochondrial biogenesis, one of the most important things. Now, let's get into a little more of the practical stuff. There's two types of hypoxia. We have local, we have systemic. Okay, so local, this is something all of you can start doing. You can use special blood pressure cuffs, but you can use any cuff, basically. And what you do is you basically inflate it and you start working out, lifting weights, things like that. Now, we can see here, low intensity exercises mimics a high intensity exercise. But let's look at this next slide. Look at this here. We have a high intensity exercise. This is a guy that's a prime athlete. He's in his 20s or 30s. He's going to do these real high intensity exercises. Then you have low intensity. So look at the difference between the two. But look at low intensity and blood flow restriction. Now let's look at some of the things that happen here. Look at growth hormone. If you do high intensity exercises, you get a 100-fold increase over the low intensity. But if you do blood flow and and low intensity, 1.7 times higher than high intensity. So basically, IGF-1 increase. Myostatin, which is basically things that make your muscles not be good. So you basically, the bottom line is you can kind of take it easy and exercise, and at the same time, really get some good benefits from it. And that's all from intermittent hypoxia, basically. And there we are there. It makes brain-derived neurogenic factor. Very important for your brain. Gets rid of brain fog and things like that. Okay, so basically, we use a machine also to do systemic hypoxia in our office. You breathe anywhere from a 9% to a 40% oxygen concentration. And basically, it can be beneficial for many different diseases, as you can see here. And it has some contraindications, but as we go on, we're finding less and less of these to be really a contraindication. And this is what the machine looks like. You can just see it right here. It just, we set it up, we do it to the patient, and pretty much that's it. And basically what we're doing is we're trying to get their oxygen below 90%. That's where you get the magic really starts happening. We like to get in this range of 75 to 89%, more or less. And we do it, and I have patients that do it, every day for, weeks on end and everything. This is something about the dissociation curve. So basically, the cells will hold on to the oxygen a little more, but that's kind of very technical. We don't need it. But here's a very important aspect. The Israelis told us about using hyperbaric oxygen, but what they said, we have a trick, though. What we're going to do is we're going to put the patient in a chamber, and they're going to use a mask, and then every 15 minutes or so, they're going to take the mask off for about 5 minutes. It's what they call an air break. And they're not going to breathe the high levels of oxygen. And what they found is all of a sudden, that started causing some very interesting things, and it really increased the telomere length. But it wasn't because of the hyperbaric oxygen. It was because of the body being tricked into the levels of oxygen that were different. And that's really what happened there. So hypoxia can cause mitogenesis, mitochondrial changes, and things like that. So basically, what it did is it helped with immune senescence. It made the telomeres longer. So instead of having to do a whole bunch of hyperbaric treatments, which are more expensive, intermittent hypoxia is a fairly inexpensive way of really getting your telomeres longer, and it's pretty easy to do. And I tried to make it nice and short and sweet, so I'm done. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions. A lot of technical stuff.
A couple of minutes for questions. Are there any questions for Dr. Purita? Over here. David?
Yes, thank you. So with stem cells, do you have any experience using frequency to imprint, say, a salt molecule in saline? Because the controversy with stem cells, as you know, is really where they come from if they're harvested, and the expense.
Well, okay, first of all, I'm going to be very honest with you. This is a field I know very well. There are no stem cells in any of the products in the United States. If you're umbilical or placenta, there's no stem cells in those products. They're all dead. Maybe some growth factors. We use only autologous. We get them from the bone marrow, from the fat, and the blood. When you say a frequency imprint, meaning what exactly?
Like a custom-built laser that imprints?
No, I have something called the Purelight, actually, I invented. We do photobiomodulation of all our injectables.
Question from online from Brent. He's asking if you think there's a connection between mitochondrial DNA and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
I would say there probably absolutely is. I think there's some studies that show that there's a bit more prevalence in mothers who've had ALS, et cetera, and the mitochondria, bad mitochondria. So I think there is.
Question back here from Johnny.
Doctor, the last speaker mentioned some therapies, hyperbaric, red light, cold, heat. And I recall in your beautiful office just up the road in Boca, you have all those and a lot more.
Right.
Would you, I don't remember you talking about them, but would you care to elaborate on some of the other machines?
Red light, for instance, what does it do? 660 nanometer wavelength. It stimulates cytochrome C oxidase, which is part 3 of the electron transport chain. It makes your mitochondria produce more ATP. Okay? Hot and cold therapy. Well, again, how proteins fold into the cell. You know, cold therapy, basically, they're going to start using that on the astronauts when these guys start going to Mars and places like that because it mimics hibernation, things like that. So a lot of different things there. I mean, hyperbaric oxygen. What's the real basis for hyperbaric oxygen? 2. Number 1, it can increase oxygen into the tissue because your hemoglobin can only hold so much, and then that's it. So it gets into the watery part of the blood. But the other important aspect from the studies of Dr. Tom at the University of Pennsylvania, it increases nitric oxide, which stimulates your bone marrow, and over 20 sessions, it'll increase the stem cell output from your bone marrow by 8 times. So my advice to you is to take a nitric oxide stimulator. Many of them out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joseph Purita. Dr. Purita, if you'll be around, there may be some questions afterwards from people. I appreciate that. After our event, you can meet up with Dr. Purita. Our next speaker is the founder of this church and one of the co-founders of RadFest, as well as a number of organizations that promote unlimited lifespans. Let's bring up Mr. Bill Faloon.
Okay. Is my microphone working? That's a standard question. I just want to say something about Dr. Purita on a personal note. I developed a condition that's unfortunately common with aging. I mean, degeneration, radiculopathy is the name of it, but the discs and the vertebrae and all these other tissues, they start to degenerate. I went to a number of doctors. I was in some chronic pain, and they were suggesting cortisone injections. They were suggesting surgery. Some of them said if I didn't do surgery, I would be crippled for life. Those kind of threats were made to me. And thank goodness, I've known Dr. Purita for a number of years. I went in to see him, and he said, you don't need any of that. You don't need any of that. Physical therapy will take care of it. And guess what? I went to some physical therapist. Problem went away. And then I developed, and I hate to say this, I'm going to turn 70 this year. Yeah, there's degeneration occurring in my body despite all the good things I'm doing for it. Sciatica, developed that. Again, I go to see Dr. Purita. He said, physical therapy, it'll go away real fast. 2 visits to a physical therapist and follow up at home exercises, gone. So thank you, Dr. Purita, for possibly saving my life. Okay, And then I want the group to know, including those outside who want to sit out there and talk, which I told them not to do because they're interfering with our presentations here. And that is that about 2 weeks ago, there was a high-end conference, very analogous to what you're seeing here at this church, high-level scientific presentations and discussions. The average ticket price, you had to be a member of this group, but the average cost of being a member of this group, $23,000 a year. Now, that included Elon Musk, many other billionaires, centimillionaires. Some of the wealthiest people in the world converged onto Los Angeles for a 6-day event, seeing these kind of presentations. They started at 7 in the morning. They ended at 10 at night, 6 continuous days. Now, some of our supporters attended that event and reported some of the good findings back to me. And some of those findings indicate we may be on the verge of super longevity before Ray Kurzweil's prediction of 2029, 2030. And that included Ray Kurzweil. He and Peter Diamandis and others were talking about the fact there's some emerging technologies that I may or may not know about, but they are going to enable that radically extended lifespan to occur sooner than what we anticipated, which is why listening to people who tell you how to stay healthy today is so important, because you don't want to miss that longevity boat. You don't want to be the last person who dies of a certain disease. Let me talk about research that I'm engaged in right now, including 4 to 5 simultaneous projects, different groups of scientists, different types of interventions in which we're using the technology that exists today to create the transcription factors you heard Dr. Purita talk about, create those Yamanaka factors in a way they can be delivered inside the nucleus of our cell. Now, 4 days after our February 22nd service, the National Library of Medicine posted a peer-reviewed published study about Yamanaka factors used in live mice to reverse degenerative aging and extend remaining lifespan. Now, we've been talking about that at this church for the last several years, but it's now been formally published in a peer-reviewed journal. That gives it a lot of credibility. And what they found is that the intermittent use of transcription factors, OSK, resulted in a 109 increase in remaining lifespan, more health across the whole body, systemic improvements, profound age reversal in the heart and liver. Think of how many people are suffering from heart failure now, liver failure. This could be a lifesaver for them. And they even tried the transcription factors on the skin of a scalp of a human. They did that in a petri dish, and they were able to reverse epigenetic age in that situation too. We're seeing the results of studies that we've been discussing at this church now reaching peer-reviewed published status and being reported now internationally through the National Library of Medicine in this country. And it's getting some publicity in the super longevity field, talking about research findings that are now published in which aging goes in reverse from an epigenetic standpoint, organ function improves, and the animals get to live longer. This is fantastic news. We need to start applying it to ourselves. So again, I've presented this before, Yamanaka transcription factors. These are proteins that can reprogram old cells back into pluripotent stem cells or young cells that can theoretically regenerate our tissues forever. And this is science that did not exist before 2006. Taken way too long to bring it into the laboratory live mouse model, but we're determined to move it into monkeys this year, humans by 2027, if not sooner. This is our objective. I'm funding a lot of research parallel with many different researchers using different delivery methods to get these Yamanaka factors into the bodies of old monkeys to see how much rejuvenation can occur. This won the Nobel Prize in the year 2012. This could be one of the more significant events in medical history beyond antibiotics, beyond perhaps any innovation that has ever occurred. So these transcription factors, they bind to DNA to turn on the beneficial genes that enable us to stay healthy when we're younger and turn off those genes that express as we grow older and cause us to degenerate, cause us to die prematurely. So OSKM, those are the 4 Yamanaka factors that won the Nobel Prize in 2012. What they do is they regenerate old cells back into young cells or into induced pluripotent stem cells if you want to go that far back. But what we're looking at more is just 3 out of 4. OSK, OCT4, SOX2, KLF4, and CMYC. Those are the 4 Yamanaka factors that have been used, but we're going to cross off that CMYC. I think I did that with the last one. The CMYC, that stimulates cellular propagation, which might be good intermittently, but we don't want excessive cellular propagation, especially as it relates to malignancies. So just the OSK looks very safe and not having that side effect risk. So I'm going to show this diagram again. The 4 Yamanaka factors that the Salk Institute people used in live mice to reverse their aging process. And what we want to do is deliver those into the nucleus of a cell. All those Yamanaka factors were delivered into the cells of the Salk Institute mice, and they grew younger without any kind of cancer problem, by the way. But what that can do is turn an old senile cell back into a pluripotent stem cell that can then produce healthy young cells throughout our entire body. That's the theory behind it, and there's a couple different ways of doing it. What we're seeking to do right now is simply turn this Yamanaka factor regeneration on with just the OSK, just 3 out of them, into that cell, and then do partial cell reprogramming. We don't want to regenerate our cells back into an embryonic phase. We don't want to do that right now. It's more efficient to take old cells, insert the Yamanaka factors, OSK, into them, and then enable them to grow younger and maintain their cellular identity and also not have any type of malignancy concern. And that's what we're seeing right now in the research. So what we're focusing on right now with multiple scientists following a parallel path is partially reprogramming old cells back into young cells so we can rejuvenate our tissues over an extended period of time. So inserting these into old cells is our mission. The OSK exists. You can purchase these, by the way. Don't do any self-experimentation. They have to be mixed with different types of carriers and injected in your body. These are not available yet for human use, but they're working in the animal model. We're determined to make it work in the non-human primate model. And we've got 2 different laboratories that are going to be working on that simultaneously. Now, prior studies have validated that the OSK, OSKM, it can rejuvenate tissues throughout the body. People are suffering from heart failure now because of a myocardial infarction. These OSK transcription factors could very well regenerate their heart muscle so they no longer suffer congestive heart failure, or they no longer suffer damaged kidneys, or they're no longer blinded by their optic nerve degenerated by glaucoma. This is the kind of research going on right now that could eliminate kidney failure, heart failure, liver failure, neurodegeneration, immune senescence. All these problems may be rectified by the timely introduction of transcription factors. So this published paper revealed a lot of interesting information, new information that we didn't know about, and I'm going to reveal the best for last. But they took these mice that were an average of 77 human years. They intermittently introduced the expression of OSK transcription factors, meaning turning it on and turning it off. They didn't want to have it expressed all the time. And they were able to see improvements across the board, including, well, living longer. The ones getting OSK, they lived about 18.5 weeks. In the control group, the ones not getting it, they died around 8 weeks. And what does that translate into as it relates to humans? Well, if we are in a trial where we're getting OSK and we get the same results, we get to live about an extra 5 years. What does that mean? And this is using primitive technology, by the way, not the accelerated advanced technology that we're pursuing right now. But what does an extra 5 years mean in 2024? It may buy you more life until 2029, 2030, where Kurzweil and many others are projecting super longevity advances that are unimaginable today. No one in society except these visionaries understands how close we are to achieving super longevity, and this is just one mechanism by which we may do it. But it is, to us right now, the most exciting one to pursue. And if all this did was reduce frailty, wow, how many lives would be saved? Because frailty, unfortunately, and including sarcopenia, osteoporosis, it increases the risk of a fall, a fracture, and a premature death. Senator Lieberman, yesterday, he was healthy, functional, suffered a fall, and died. He's being buried tomorrow. I mean, that's the end of his life, unfortunately. So reducing the frailty index score will save countless sufferings and deaths that are occurring amongst older people because of the inevitability of sarcopenia. It's a major problem. OSK improved the frailty index. But this is the most exciting aspect of this published study right now, published in a peer-reviewed journal, and that is the researchers admitted a lot of mistakes were made. Not their fault. Bear in mind, this is pioneering work. We don't know yet how to do everything perfect. But the intended amount of OSK that they wanted to get into the cells was a fraction of what they were seeking to achieve. It was a wisp in some respects. A tiny little bit of OSK resulted in that remarkable 109% extension of remaining lifespan, overall improved health, heart, liver, epigenetic age reversal, all kinds of benefits, and now research is moving forward to not repeat the same mistakes and do it in a much more efficient manner. And we may see even more remarkable results. But we already know, even when it's done with the insufficient optimal technology, we're still seeing remarkable results. And as it relates to the skin, people spend a fortune on plastic surgery and topicals. Well, OSK may be the solution. It was able to reverse epigenetic age reversal. A lot of research is going on now in the commercial industry where people want to develop creams and everything else, and that's fine, but our focus at this church is to enable you to live forever. And if you have old skin, frankly, that's okay. If you're alive, that's what counts. So published in Cell Reprogramming, and they're talking about these Yamanaka factors being delivered into cells, potentially reversing age-associated disease in older people. which is what our objective is. I mean, if we keep younger people alive indefinitely by delaying or preventing aging, that's great. But everyone in this room, I think, wants to see their age reversed, their biological age reversed. So the conclusion of this study, published just relatively recently. We're talking about a study that we've been following the scientific work, but it wasn't published, that we're talking about improving health span and lifespan, and scientists tend to be conservative. They don't want to portray something until they prove that this could result in potentially indefinitely extended life. And as it relates to epigenetic age, we talk a lot about that, but it's a way of measuring DNA methylation patterns in such a way that we can predict one's mortality and morbidity risk. Their future risks can be predicted by looking at DNA methylation patterns, and we can identify who's more likely to die, but we can also measure the effects of different interventions. So when we start using Yamanaka factors in the primate model, in old monkeys, we're going to do baseline epigenetic age measures, give them the OSK Yamanaka factors, and see how young we can make them from an epigenetic age standpoint. And to show you how effective and efficient this can be, that you want to reach age 90, well, if you are 5 years older from an epigenetic age measure, that's a DNA methylation evaluation, you have a 30% lower likelihood of reaching age 90. And we don't want anything standing in our way. So if we're able to measure this, and these tests right now are expensive, they're challenging to get, but once we start the clinical work, we're going to be doing them on a lot of people. Baseline OSK levels, well, really baseline epigenetic age, and then adding the OSK and seeing how well we're able to reverse aging. So our objective right now is to look at delivery methods, because we need to get these OSK that are going to be exogenously administered into the body. Well, they don't just necessarily go into the cell nucleus the way we want. So we're looking at different viral vectors, we're looking at plasmids, we're looking at lipo-nanoparticles. We're studying every potential delivery method to see which one boosts OSK the most efficiently, which one enables the greatest amount of age reversal to occur, which one is the safest. That is our priority right now on the research front. And to put this into context, 2006 is when the rules of biology changed. Before then, reversing aging, that's just impossible. Couldn't happen. Well, Dr. Yamanaka and his team, they proved it could be done in a petri dish. It was done with human cells in 2011, Nobel Prize awarded in 2012, and then 2022, 3 independent studies using OSK in old animals, old rodents. They were able to reverse aging, and the last one extended remaining lifespan. So our goal for 2024, aggressive primate research. Lots of OSK into old monkeys. And let's see how we can rejuvenate those old monkeys back into youth, measuring every parameter we're able to. One group of scientists hopes to have this available in people by 2027, and there's some scientists out there who are already doing it. And I'm not endorsing that at all. We are in contact with them, sharing the information so that we don't have to repeat the same mistakes. So cell rejuvenation, considered impossible before 2006, and now aggressive research on it across the board. We talked about George Church quite a bit at this church, and he is the pioneer of a lot of CRISPR technology. And once CRISPR is perfected, well, the Yamanaka factors may be incorporated in a way where we get perfection. So what's happened is FDA approved in January CRISPR to treat thalassemia. That's a hemoglobin deficiency. It causes problems for certain people of Italian descent. It's rather prevalent. But thalassemia approved for use by the FDA in 2004, just a couple months ago. And I think, let me see, I'm going to go forward here. So that's FDA approving that. And then we have the FDA also approving that for sickle cell anemia, but that's not on this slide presentation. But Wall Street Journal, just a couple weeks ago, talked about that doctors are going to soon be able to edit the genes inside our bodies. They're talking about that now in the mass media. So what we talked about here at this church in 2015 about the potential of CRISPR to edit our genes so we can live a real long time, it's happening, and it's making front page news. We're really happy about that. And yeah, George Church, you kind of are playing God, and we appreciate it, because we need a lot of help. We need a lot of help to edit our genes so they stay perpetually young. So that is my little update about what I'm doing right now to reverse aging. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a couple of questions, Bill, online. A question from Rudy. What other labs are doing similar research to what you are funding? And are there other labs using Yamanaka in similar manner?
Yes, there are many labs right now looking at these research findings and trying to figure out what they can do. And some of those labs are private individuals, people with the financial resources to fund scientists, to fund the development of delivery vehicles, and they're doing it on their own. Others are some of the wealthiest people in the world. Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, the billionaires are putting up big money to also do this research. Now, we don't care who wins this race. We just want someone to win it in our lifetime. But I can say that some of the work that we are doing might be a little bit more aggressive than what they're doing. So they've got more money than we do. We've got some talent that's rather unique. And I'm looking forward to this kind of race to see who can incorporate OSK into old people and make them much younger, much healthier, and enable them to potentially live for an indefinite period of time. Lots of other people putting money into this, and we are part of that group. Part of that group meaning we're putting money into it, and we are in contact with these individuals. So if we can see something, we're sharing it. We're not keeping any IP secrets. We want people to know what we find so they can maybe improve on what we're doing.
Another question online. Is there any data or research that you know of on Yamanaka factors and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease?
I would think that once we perfect the delivery and the turning on and turning off of the Yamanaka factors, a lot of chronic diseases that are incurable today might be treatable. I know that for sure. It might involve more sophisticated gene editing processes like CRISPR. But once we start controlling our genetic expression, lots of problems right now that we suffer with are just going to disappear the way antibiotics wiped out most of the problems with bacterial infections.
Question from Peter.
Hey, so, the Buck Institute found that you could reverse, you could deacetylate the DNA by 8 years with a chemical called alpha ketoglutarate. They licensed it to a company in Florida named Ponce de Leon Labs. And that's supposed to back you up about 8 years. Now, this is for a 60-year-old person, the acetylation of the DNA. So, in other words, it's an epigenetic untying of the DNA so more genes can be expressed. I'm just concerned is that there's a lot of acetylation that occurs from age 1 to 20, and then it kind of plateaus. So if you wanted your kid to grow to be 10 feet tall and he was, just stopped his growth spurt in puberty, and you could reverse his age down to by 8 years back to like being 8 years or 10 years old again, and then he could grow another 5 feet taller. Have you heard about alpha ketoglutarate?
We've been studying alpha ketoglutarate for decades, and we're aware of the data out there. We see some flaws in that data, which is why we don't recommend it at this point. If you are going to take it, you need about 8 to 10 grams in some comparative analyses that we've done. That's one of the dilemmas. But a lot of people are looking at certain research, and they're thinking, well, I should take alpha ketoglutarate, which is okay, no danger to it. We just haven't seen the consistent efficacy to meet our standards. Doesn't mean it doesn't work, though.
Question here from David.
Thank you. All three speakers tonight have talked about the importance of red blood cells, white blood cells, T cells, stem cells, and regeneration. Are you familiar with chlorine dioxide, and what is your opinion of helping with that and fungus and parasites and controlling it in the body?
I've heard a lot about it. Again, we look at the published data. If we can't see consistency with it, it's hard for us to really evaluate. So it's not something that we recommend now, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just the data doesn't impress us enough yet.
What are your thoughts about the health benefits of young plasma from young donors?
That's another area we are studying beyond Yamanaka factors. Another study I don't have time to talk about was published just in many respects very recently, and it showed remarkable reversals of epigenetic age in the heart, liver, kidneys, remarkable benefits with a young plasma fraction derived from pigs. And the advantage of pigs are there's a lot of genetic similarities with people, but you have a virtual unlimited supply of young plasma. We are in contact with that group. They have offered to let us do monkey studies with their proprietary young plasma fraction concentrate from pigs, and we intend to do that research on old monkeys to see if we can replicate the work they did in old rats. So we moved from old rats that this company did, and they're out of money right now. And we said, well, if you give us your formula, we'll try it in old monkeys. If we can see that aging go in reverse, maybe they can raise some more money and try it in people. So, but just young plasma in general, don't know yet. We don't know if it really works, but it's probably going to require a lot more exosomes, a lot more young constituents administered on a more frequent basis, or this pig plasma may only be needed to be administered every 3 to 6 months.
Well, there are two other related questions I'd like to bring out from the internet, and if there are any comments that you have on them, we appreciate that. One is, what are your thoughts about the health benefits of therapeutic plasma exchanges as shown by Irina Conboy and Dolby Kiprov? The other question is if you're asking you to comment on any of the latest work on plasma transfusions.
Well, we helped Dober Kiprov recruit 80 patients for his study, which saved him a lot of money. We sent out an age reversal update, and a lot of people wanted to participate in that. There are some studies that show remarkable benefits when young plasma is put into old rats, perhaps even old people in certain studies. There's different ways of administering this. Some people undergo plasmapheresis, where they remove the old senile plasma, put in albumin, put in immunoglobulins. Some people are removing old plasma and then later putting in young, fresh, frozen plasma. There's a number of different protocols utilizing young plasma, and what we need to do is research which ones are working. And that means doing those DNA methylation tests where we measure epigenetic age baseline, along with a panel of conventional markers like fasting insulin that the first speaker talked about, and lipids and inflammatory markers. All these different markers from a conventional standpoint, if we find young plasma reverses those pathological markers in the blood of aging, we'll be very happy with that, even if we don't necessarily see the DNA methylation age change that much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill Faloon.
This one. Okay.
Folks, our presentation tonight has been recorded. Please share it with those people that you love. Let them know that this has been recorded. Remember to join our Zoom next month, April the 25th, where we will be in Zoom only. And I'd want to thank you and ask you to join our buffet tonight that is in honor of our speakers, Dr. Purita and Ben and Bill. Thank you for coming tonight.